Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of CISO Talk, where we talk all things CISO, cybersecurity, and whatever else is of interest to our panel. Before we start, let me mention that my regular co-host for CISO Talk, Matt Newfield, Chief Infrastructure Security Officer at Unisys, had the nerve to take vacation this week, and so he's not available, so we're going to continue on without him. Of course, Mitchell is here as always.
Mitchell Ashley, our CT.
Mitchell, of course, CTO at MediaOps and CEO of Accelerated Strategies Group. And then we have a great panel joining us. Let me introduce you to them and allow them to introduce themselves to you a little bit. Let's start off with Nicole Dove, who has been kind enough to come back after doing a show or two with us. Nicole, welcome. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Thanks, Alan. It's so great to be back. I'm Nicole Dove. I am a Business Information Security Officer at WarnerMedia, visiting lecturer at Clark Atlanta University, and I host the Urban Girl Corporate World podcast.
Excellent. Thank you and welcome. Joining us also for the first time on CISO Talk is Rob Lee. Hey, Rob, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, thanks for having me as well. My name is Rob Lee. I'm the Chief Curriculum Director and the Head of Faculty at the SANS Institute. My background goes back 22 years from the United States Air Force, being a part of the first operational unit. My forte is in incident response, digital forensics, and chasing bad guys after they've broken into your network. Formerly worked at the U.S. government, Mandiant, and my own consulting firm before joining SANS.
Excellent. Thanks and welcome, and thanks for joining us. Thank you. And then our final, but certainly not our least panel member, is a very, very special guest. Just started her own security company, which has been a long time in the making. Let me introduce you to Jennifer Minella, or JJ. Jennifer, welcome. It's such a pleasure to have you here.
Hey, Alan. Hey, guys. It's so great to be here. Thanks.
You want to give them a little background?
I just thought you did that for me. Yeah. So
No. I want you to mention the new company name. Come on.
Sure. So founder and principal advisor, primarily in cybersecurity and infrastructure security at Viszen Security. So I'm working with technology vendors as well as security conscious organizations to increase their security posture with SOC and NOC teams. Long history of working in the security space and network infrastructure, wireless security as well. So really happy to be here with you guys and girls, Miss Nicole.
Yes. Jennifer, how do you spell, you pronounced it vision, but how do you spell it?
Oh, it's, So this is what happens with people that get up at 4:00 in the morning. It's VISZEN. So it's kind of a play on vision and vision. As you guys know, I'm very much into mindfulness and balance. So the kind of concept is balance between SOC and NOC. Yeah.
Vision Zen. Excellent. Okay, and welcome, and thanks for being here, Jennifer. So, panel, our discussion today is going to center around cybersecurity training, getting ready the next generation of cybersecurity professionals. You know, when Mitchell and I co-founded Still Secure back in the early 2000s, I remember a survey we did back then asking security professionals how they got into security. Something like 75% of the people forgot to take a step backwards when they asked for a volunteer. They were basically network folk who, by hook or crook, got wrangled into managing a firewall or an early IDS, or maybe on the help desk side of things, all of a sudden antivirus became something that they were responsible for. They didn't consciously go into security, and there was no formal training, right? SANS was around at the time, but that was for people who were already in security for the most part, right? They didn't have cybersecurity training in colleges or even high schools as we have today. There was no, it was security back then was a lot of people who liked to break things and then try to put them back together better, right? That you couldn't break them. Of course, the world's changed, and today we have a ton of cybersecurity training. But if you talk to a lot of hiring people and a lot of people in the field, they're saying that, these people coming out of these programs, they're really not qualified yet, or it's not what it should be. What do you think, Rob? As someone from the SANS Institute, you're the logical expert here. What do you think? What have we done a good job preparing tomorrow's security professionals, or is there something terribly amiss here?
It's hard to say, but I would say yes. We actually have a really hard problem ahead of us, and it's kind of twofold. Number one, trying to talk to those, especially younger in college, to see that this is a career field, that this is something that they should take a stab at, is difficult, because most of the time that you're in these programs early on, they try to route people into computer science, saying, hey, computer science is the path forward. I was a astronautical engineer. I had no formal training in computer science, but I still ended up in cyber. And a lot of my peers found their way the same way. So it's more of, do you have an affinity for technology? But the hard part is trying to get those early core principles taught to them in a way that makes it exciting and fun. And that's where doing more of the gamification, trying to get high schoolers involved in clubs, college level programs that are really trying to guide them early on and say, hey, this may be a career field for you. The second part of it is those who are looking for reskilling that are, maybe they're 30, 35 years old and saying, hey, I'm looking over there. It looks like there's a lot of need for jobs in cybersecurity, but I have no idea where to begin. It looks like if I walk into any average training location, including SANS, it's all advanced, intermediate, style programs. And it's really hard to find the ones that are saying, hey, if you're brand new to this is where you should probably start. The opposite side of that is the HR side. They're trying to recruit people, as you just said, that say, hey, I need someone who can actually do the job I'm hiring them for. And how do I know that they have the requisite skills? Is it through certifications? Is it they have to do a requisite, battery of training? Do I hire them and then train them? And as soon as they get trained, they're going to go somewhere else. So a lot of the folks that I find it kind of interesting on the HR side, they'll put a brand new security analyst, junior analyst, 3 years experience, computer science degree. And, trying to work with HR teams is saying, I think that's a mid-tier analyst that you actually put in for a new one. And they say, no, we know that, but we're just trying to find people that actually do the job. So there's this really hard push on both sides is, can't we train people to get to their first job in cybersecurity to where they're actually usable? And right now, that is a significant challenge, not only for the SANS Institute, but for the industry as a whole.
I agreed. Panel, feel free to jump in here with thoughts.
Yeah, I think just my own experience working, with you, Alan, and with the panel in the industry for this long. Yeah, I think about it's no longer sort of an accident, stumble into it, sort of as you described it, how maybe you or I got into it or others at that time. But there's a lot of interest around security because it pays well. There's a lot of interest in cybersecurity because there's a lot of need. And I don't know what guidance, if they still have guidance counselors and you take those tests for what kind of an affinity should be, a doctor or a lawyer or a cybersecurity engineer, or how they, have those kind of criterias. I think we have to appeal to the natural affinity of people. Are you someone who likes technology, who likes to get in and tinker and play and break, kind of as you described? And that's where the hackathons and the things for cybersecurity, capture the flag, creating those kind of events. What a great pool for saying, okay, great, come on over. Let's give you some experience. Let's get you into this process. That's certainly one way. I mean, Jennifer, you and I and Alan have worked together for a while in this field, and it's evolved. And I know you've worked with a lot of companies. I'm really curious if you see some new approaches that we might want to take.
Yeah, and I guess to roll back a little bit, Rob, as something just kind of popped into my head that I really hadn't thought about until you said something that jogged this. But I think, technology always changes quickly. But I feel like the industry is changing more quickly right now. And not even really from a skills perspective, but from a acronym perspective. So what I mean by that is, for a long time, we had switching, we had routing, we had firewalls, we had these things that were kind of prevalent. They didn't change too much over the course of time. And then you look at kind of the evolution, the cycle of those, technologies or products now, and things like on the networking side, right, EVPN and VXLAN technologies and SDN, and then XDR, and it was MDR, and there's EDR, and these skills are shifting every few months because there's new marketing terms or new technologies, air quote. And I think for a long time, some of the larger companies, and Nicole, I bet you have a bunch of experience with this, the larger companies were kind of a great way to build that pipeline because they had the resources to bring in somebody new, whether it was, reskilling or a student coming in, work through that internship and that mentorship, do that training, give them the skills, and then kind of release them back into the wild. And that's not a valid solution and pipeline when we're in an innovation cycle where that's spinning faster than these companies can ingest and then evolve and grow those professionals and spit them back out to us.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll tell you, Jennifer, summing up what you just said, I think what happens is a lot of companies, and Nicole, I'm interested in if this is what happens at Time Warner, is it's easier to hire these people than to grow these people, right? To keep these people up to speed, up to code, right, on the latest and greatest is an investment. It's an investment by those people in their career. It's an investment by their employers in making sure they stay up to date on stuff. And let's face it, the average person stays in their cybersecurity job for 14 or 18 months, and they book, right? So as a Time Warner, how much money you want to invest in a cyber person who's going to leave in a year and a half, right? Interested in your take.
It's interesting. So we've got and I work in the information security office at WarnerMedia. And, I think a lot of it depends on the actual function within security that we're speaking to, right? So from an information security perspective, what I'm finding is that most of the folks who are traditionally trained in areas of anything across the board, more tech related, they're very laser focused on developing a task or developing software or infrastructure or networking. But there's always this space for us to come in and help them embed security into what they're doing. So the skills for that are a little bit different, right? Some of the things that I'm really interested in are an innovative problem solver, right? Somebody who can influence, somebody who can negotiate. I recently just hired a manager to work on my team, and he's been a software engineer for all of his career, maybe 6 or 7 years. But he's always had this interest in security. And he's great because him and I can come into a conversation with the development team. He can speak their language, and then we can also begin to think about how to influence them to shift left and how to do that in a way that's effective and efficient. When I started in cybersecurity, I had no formal training, right? A lot of my skills were transferable. And I kind of just got thrown in the water and like, hey, figure it out, right? And I think that my leadership, and this was at my previous company, felt comfortable doing that because I think they understood that sometimes the softer skills are a bit tougher to train on than the technical skills. But it's all about finding a balance because you can't have a full team of soft skill people with no technical expertise, right? That's definitely not going to work. So I think it's a little bit about company culture, what type of people are successful, what the need of the organization is, and making sure that across the board, I think going forward, we all need to have both that good balance of technical expertise and business acumen, because information security is quickly becoming something of interest to boards, to leaders. A lot more companies are asking for SOC reports, right? All these different SaaS, PaaS, vendors are coming into play. And we've got to definitely keep it balanced.
Yeah. I mean, Rob, not asking you to talk on behalf of SANS, but in light of where SANS is and what it's doing, how do you deal with like the problem Jennifer mentioned, which is the cybersecurity industry, maybe like I've never seen in all my 25, 30 years here, is really in a state of flux in terms of there's so much new coming out. There's so much spotlight on what we need, we need to do better. It's so important, more important than ever, it seems. How is SANS, helping to? I mean, how do you guys make sure you're staying current and giving people the skill sets they need to be successful here?
Well, it is definitively challenging. When you take a look at, Jennifer hit the nail on the head. Just take a look at what cloud was even 5 years ago. If you were trying to write a course in cloud, and we were for many years, just trying to find an expert who had the experience to be able to sit down and train others. It's, the skills just weren't there yet. We couldn't even find the experts out there to potentially say, hey, you could go train someone. Now we have, but, take a lot of our cloud courses. As soon as you have something written down as a lab, 6 weeks later, the entire interface changes and the entire infrastructure changes of what you're trying to train them on. So we're rapidly, constantly having to upgrade our labs, and our update cycles have reduced from about 3 or 4 months down to weeks in certain times, especially in these newer technology areas, especially cloud. As we're heading down that, the other side of what we're really trying to do is that we have a lot of, especially for the new stuff, cloud has to be taught at lower levels. You have to teach that to those just coming up. You have to have them understand how the computing in the cloud works, as software as a service is potentially deployed, what these terms mean, the boundary network, the enterprise network that we're all trying to defend, with, perimeter defense is something that we're going to look back on like the Maginot Line that says, yeah, who was doing that? Why were you doing it that way? So we have to consistently force ourselves to take a look at these different topics and say, is that even relevant anymore? We have a team of people going through our courseware. If we have something that's referencing an event that's older than 2 years, we have to say that's too old now. We actually have to update that to clonal pipeline. We have to update that to the latest stuff. And it is challenging because it's very easy to sit on your laurels and say, the stuff that happened in 2009 is still a really good example. But something in 2009 that was, very newsworthy at that point, and we're talking around that point, 2009 to 2012, the APT-1 report came out. The Chinese APT was everywhere. They still are, but using those as examples of how they're potentially breaking in systems and still exploiting. Some things are still true, spear phishing and the like, but a lot of the ways that they're potentially using the sales supply chain to be able to penetrate what just happened with SolarWinds. I mean, it is incredible that you have to really strive to be able to keep things up to date. And it stresses me out because I have to really work with my authors is saying, hey, do you feel that your stuff, if someone looks at it today versus in 5 years, what is that expiration date in terms of that is still relevant? And in the cloud side of our curriculum, it is weeks of, churn that we sometimes find in order to keep things up to date. It's really stressful, but, it's something that, we've signed on to try and accomplish. But to Jennifer's point is, something that is advanced, today is going to be considered beginner even a year or two from now. And somehow how to balance that and how to get someone, what about all the other stuff? How to do IPv4, IPv6. Some of these cores were never going to go away, but you still need to get them to understand it in order to get to the point where they're talking cloud. So my head hurts a little bit. It says there's so much material that is now on the intro side in order to get to someone to be a usable person in their first job in cyber. And so it's like, what, the question I have for a lot of CISOs out there is that when I ask for their list of their first, what is the qualifications? What do you need someone to actually do in their first job in cyber? And they give me a laundry list of, all these, like every person has to have all these skills. I said, well, you're not going to get that. Yeah. What, if you could choose 5 of those skills, what are they? So they could actually become a usable employee. Because if you only have them 14 to 16 months, we should start focusing in on just the core skills and then build their, entry level position 1, then entry level position 2. But I can't get a lot of the CISOs and those in HR is because we're really trying to get that feedback. what are those core skills? And
Yeah,
we can
yeah.
track that so we can deliver someone more usable versus a generic body that you still have to train to do their job.
And you got right to the hot button there. the trigger. I think, Rob, you need it best diffused by on all your, that's almost like that's what we're
But then he brings up another issue, and I think it's what Nicole touched on too, right? So, you need someone who's adaptable, who has some good business background, maybe, who understands what the big picture is. But we see too many jobs, right? We want a Kubernetes expert who has a bachelor's and master's, has at least started their PhD program, and has 10 years of experience in Kubernetes, which has been out for 5 years, right? And then we say, well, we can't find anyone to fill this job. Oh, and we're paying $65,000 because it's an entry-level position, right? Right. Oh, we can't find anyone to find this job. It goes back to, what kind of person do we want in our cybersecurity industry, right? As Nicole is in WarnerMedia or in some of the companies that you all deal with, right? So our friends over in DevOps Institute do the upskilling report and all that. And they talk a lot about an I-shaped individual, right, who has one major skill, so it's just an I. And then you have a T-shaped individual who maybe has one major skill, but then has some nice general skills that fit on top of it. And then you have sort of that broom-shaped skilled individual who has a lot of strong things. If we just focus in on security, as I think Jennifer said in the beginning, there's so many different aspects of security today. Within network security, within cloud security, within data security or endpoint security, and all of the DevSecOps, AppSec, right? You almost need, do you need that broom-shaped person, that broom-skilled person who has many different things, or are we still better off with a good generalist who's malleable, who's trainable, who is fungible, that we can move around? Nicole, what do you think?
I think we need all of those guys on one team. That's what I think.
If you can find them, and their PhD candidates,
right? Yeah, good luck with that. But my question as I'm listening to you unpack some of the issues, one of the things that rings loud, Alan, is folks are only staying in roles for 14 to 16 months. Why is that? I think that's something that we've got to solve for, right? And people typically, they say people typically don't leave jobs, they leave managers. So are these managers not giving people the opportunity to develop across other areas, right? It's interesting. I think, again, it depends on the company and what the needs are. But to shift left again, why is it that as folks are building domain expertise, security is not a part of that curriculum, right? Like, is it too idealistic to think that someday we would never need such a heavy focus on security because security is so embedded into every domain expertise? I mean, that's idea. I don't know if it would ever happen, right? But I just think that as whether it's at the college level, these executive programs, booster trainings or whatever, we focus so much on concepts, but I don't know that we pull security into that talk track to think about how to embed it there. And that might be a big, big opportunity.
Could be. I mean, Jennifer, you were at one employer for 20 years, right? But you also saw a lot of people come and go. People you skilled along the way, people who came to you with skills. How do you respond to what Nicole's talking about there?
I hate saying I agree. I definitely do agree, but I think maybe a couple different points of view. So my role, and that company's role being an integrator is a little bit different because, you're asking somebody to be a expert on several types of products and technologies, at least in our company, right? You need to know switch route, you need to know firewall, you need to know you need to know wireless to a certain degree because we service breadth of customers, hundreds, thousands of customers. And you need to just kind of go in and not have to go, oh, wait, let me stop and ask somebody else about this. So my experience is kind of specialized and niche when it comes to that, but definitely, I guess, kind of rolling back and tying together something Nicole said with something Rob said. Because Rob, you were talking about the changes and iterations in I think the user interface in cloud, and how, right, you have to like update training and everything because it changes so quickly. And that's not just cloud. I mean, it kind of is, but our entire world now is living in cloud. So if you look at, on the networking side, just to kind of give a holistic picture here, one of the challenges I know, a couple of the tech manufacturers are having is, they have interfaces that are driven by APIs on the back end, and the interface is just a visual representation of how the product manager decided to show that to you that day. And it changes every 2 weeks sometimes. And the challenge with that, so for me, I don't care. I understand the technology and I understand the product, and I know where I need to go find something, and maybe it's just on a different screen. But when you don't have somebody that has that foundational knowledge and that experience, I think that's a lot more challenging. And I kind of always relate this to dance. So you guys know I'm a competitive dancer of many years, at ballroom and swing and all kinds of stuff. And it's the same thing there, right? You learn a series of patterns and steps that are not only common within one dance, but they're shared across 10, 12, 15 dances. And so, you can walk out onto a floor, and if you're skilled in those things, you can follow anybody in any dance, literally anybody in any dance if they can lead it. And that's kind of the way I, translate, technical knowledge, whether it's, security specific or just, application development, sysadmin, network admin, is you kind of have to have those found. If you want to be wildly successful and be well-rounded, it's easier to go into that with that foundational knowledge and know how the pieces fit together. And then, maybe kind of vertically do your I or do your T or your broom or whatever off of that. And certainly there's room for the specialists that only do this thing or know this thing. But they have to at least understand the concepts and the foundational knowledge of whatever that thing is. They can't just know, I need to click this button on this screen and then go to that screen. And so I think that's the foundational knowledge, which probably, Rob, is something you guys try to, build people up to that point instead of just throwing them into a pen testing training, right? That pen testing doesn't work if you don't understand applications and the network layer and everything else. And I think what I've heard from Rob is that you were a rocket scientist and you haven't figured this out yet. So I don't know that there's hope for the rest of us.
Yeah.
Nor can we dance. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure what that says.
Speak for yourself, Mitchell.
Yeah, I
can. But it's very true. It's very true, and I think that is another sort of dark undertone of today's topic, which is, are we, when we talk about filling our cybersecurity roles, are we looking for unicorns? Right? Mythical creatures that don't exist. Has the job become, and has the task become so hard that we just are incapable of making, growing, graduating, training enough people to do this tough job? It's a tough job. And security's always been hard. I'm sorry, Mitch, go ahead. Yeah, no.
Maybe it comes with the gray hair here, but maybe you take the long game, take the long view approach here, right? If you're, we've all been in the industry, different lengths of time, but enough to know that they're solving for the short-term need. I need thinking of people as widgets that go in slots, right? And a lot of people that think that way, right? I need a person X to fill this, to do that, person Y to do that. When in fact, what it's about is, we all know, and we're all good examples of this, you're going to work with people in this career, possibly multiple times, right? We've known Jennifer a long, long time. Nicole's become a good friend. Rob, we know all the way back to Stephen Northcutt. in the early SANS days. So as a leader, you're thinking on multiple levels. Yeah, I'm growing and helping cultivate. I may be going to the high school things and helping people with those fundamental skills and talking to Rob about, hey, who's some sharp folks that have kind of gotten past that first step, and that I might think about hiring if they've taken the pen test course or whatever it is. And then as well as present opportunities that people can pursue because they want to be a product specialist, because they want to be a specialist in an area, because they want to be a broom. I like lots of things. A good path. I work with a gentleman by the name of Nixon, extremely sharp dude who started in the auditing part of it. You get a lot of exposure to a lot of things. The dude is smart to start with, but he's got so much knowledge in a very short period of time from that experience. So I'm kind of rambling here, but I think you have to kind of play it at all levels, right? And it's our role as leaders to invest in people and invest in a way that helps them grow wherever they are today. And believe that there's some point where I might have hired Nicole, but I might work for Nicole at my next job. That's happened to me, not specifically Nicole, but it's the world we're in.
Well, to go back
I have
to
a question. No, sorry, go ahead, Rob.
I was just going back to something that Nicole said earlier about the soft skills, and I see this and have seen this routinely, is that you get a lot of folks in their first couple jobs, and they are very technical, but they don't have any really direct management. How do you potentially run a small team? It's interesting. If you ever go to leadership training, it's almost like they're trying to design you to be the next CEO or chief product officer or something like that. Versus, can you run a team of 3? Do you know how to, take care of them and make sure that they have their tasks and not micromanage them? I see a lot of those in technology because they're so, type A personalities that they will go in and tell everyone exactly what to do for their jobs and start to reduce the creativity. And you take a look at, I read a lot of books, about how Pixar was formed and Creativity Inc. And I look at that creativity process because it's no different than what we're potentially trying to accomplish with our technologists in cybersecurity. Is how do you keep that team-based ability to be and give candor to your teammates without having them feel that you're insulting them? And how do you have the team leads work with them and generate that environment? These are the soft skills Nicole was talking about that are so essential now. If we're going to break that 14th month umbrella in order to get people to say, we're going to invest more in you, we have to have them feel that they have a home, that they have a team, that they like being there, that they're energized for work and they feel valued. It's so as much important as the technologies. Sorry.
It's okay. Jennifer?
Yeah, I feel like somebody's going to think Rob and I were IMing on the background because he went barking up the same tree I was about to go tackle. And what I was going to say is I wanted to ask kind of Nicole's thought on this too, is, so I'm, again, I don't want to get into the details of this and go down a rabbit hole, but I found myself going from a very technical individual contributor role to managing a team suddenly, and was so horribly bad at it. And didn't want to do it, frankly, that I invested a lot of, my time and money into developing those skills. So one of the challenges now, having, managed teams and been a leader and kind of mentored or coached other people in the profession that are at the practitioner level, one of the things that I've kind of learned, and I think a lot of things in security come back to people and the human element, is that, I think sometimes it's I don't want to call it a personality thing, but I think it's a culmination of whether it's, this side where there's a lot of ego driving certain behaviors, or the flip side where, things are progressing so quickly that it's hard for a professional, especially a new one, to be confident in their skills, right? And to kind of establish themselves and hold their ground. And one of the great examples, and I can't remember what book this was in, but it was referencing a long history of airline flight accidents across the world. And there was this interesting kind of these data points around, where there were cultures of, this person's in charge, don't ever question them. there were a lot more accidents. I mean, exponentially more accidents, simply because the co-pilot didn't have the confidence or the balls to stand up to the pilot and go, "You're making a bad decision. This is what we need to do." And I don't, the little bit of a parallel there is just, even if we're making it inviting for them, and even if we're giving them growth opportunities, even if we're doing X, Y, and Z, which is all stuff that has to be done, I feel like there's this other kind of sublayer of developing them as a human and developing, I base that on mindfulness, which is be comfortable with yourself. You're here for a reason. We picked you for a reason. Be confident in your skills, and let's figure out how to get you confident if you're not. And, working through what it means, because usually at some point there is some progression, right? An individual contributor to managing a small team to something else. The first thing is not everybody wants to do that. And that's okay. And I think we should make that, that clear and make sure they're in an environment where that's supported. But if it is of interest, and this is where I've, found myself, so this is one of my offerings now with my new company is technical coaching and mentoring for practitioners to kind of get them over this hump. Because I feel like so many organizations lose good people, not because they weren't nurtured professionally, but I don't think they've been grown and nurtured, and they don't necessarily have good role models. Like their manager might not be a good manager, and it's not that they're a bad person, right? They didn't have those skills either, so this person doesn't have anybody to learn from. It's contentious, and they bail either because they're leaving a manager, or there's just enough friction within the team, and they're really not sure how to progress because nobody's supporting that. So that was long. I didn't mean it to be that long, but Nicole, I'm kind of curious what you think.
Yeah, I'll say most of the problems that I find myself solving are not tech problems, they're people problems, right? And a lot of what I work with my direct report is not, you need to take this training or learn how to do this thing. It's understanding what their strengths and opportunities are, and being able to effectively place them on projects that help enhance those while still highlighting and letting their strengths shine through, right? A lot of it is servant leadership, right? That's really what it's all about. And those are the type of environments where I think most people thrive well. When I first became a leader, I was like, oh, this is great. Everybody's going to listen to me now and do everything that I say. But that was totally not what happened, right? Being a leader was really about understanding what people's needs are and helping them, down that path of success and make progress and roadblocks. And sometimes that is technical, right? And sometimes it's soft skills, but a lot of it is, even within the security function across the board, it's building relationships, establishing trust with my business partners, intellectual curiosity, innovative problem solving, and a lot of times overcoming imposter syndrome. And I think that's probably what a lot of the new security folks are dealing with, and even some more mature ones. You would be really surprised. So I totally agree with both the points you, Jennifer, and that Rob made is right. It's really just about building the collective. And I think once we're able to kind of have that 360 approach of good leadership, good training ground, good opportunity, we'll start to see some that needle move a little bit in how people show up and how long they stick around.
Yeah, I think that with specifically the CISOs, right? This CISO talk, we had this problem, and it set back the success and adoption of CISO as a true C-level officer for a long time, because typically what would happen is for CISO, they would pick a good security person, someone who really understood security technology, really understood. They had their CISSP, right? And they had their SANS training certificate. And they knew security technology, and they knew the finer points of PCI compliance, and there was no GDPR, right? But, these kinds of things. But they were miserable managers. They were very inexperienced team leaders. They didn't understand how to empower and enable and grow the people on their team. They knew how to do security programs, but not how to manage security people. And that's a very, very important part of the CISO role, right? It's a rare bird that you're a one-man security team as a CISO. Maybe there's some out there, I don't know. But for the most part, when you're a CISO, you're managing a team of security folk. And that's going to be one of the most important skill sets, I think, that you bring to your job. Not how well you know how to use Metasploit or configure, your wireless security or, any other kind of technical skill set like that.
I think one step you could also take in what you're saying, Alan, is for the CISO or the person looking to become the CISO, it's not the technical skills. It's the communication skills to talk to non-technical people, even more so having the business domain and business language. Because guess what? It's sort of you get a lot more flies with honey kind of thing, right? If you can speak business language, Nicole, you're living this, right? And this is your world. You don't go to the CEO and say, we had a SYNAC problem, or whatever. And they're going to be like, yeah, go back, send me an email. I'll read it later. But they have the same problem, and maybe even including the imposter syndrome that you talked about. So it's really up the chain, because it's not just about technology. It's not about the best hacker that you can't put in front of somebody else and just keep them in a dark room. That's not the world we live in. There are those folks, but most of us have to interface with the rest of the organization. Matter of fact, we have to talk to software developers. We have to work with auditors. We have to work with product leaders, everybody. So to your point, Nicole, and what you're saying, Jennifer, too, is that it's growing people not in just one technical dimension, including
harder.
Sorry, Rob.
I was just going to jump in. It's even harder today because with what's happened over the past year and a half, most organizations have become almost nearly 90 to 100% virtual. What I'm seeing in a lot of organizations I'm talking to is that managing teams remotely on Zooms, like even what we are now, and how to do that interface and how to have that connection and what does it mean, mental health, all these things no one has it solved. And you're essentially managing a team of personalities like a bunch of JPL NASA engineers that, it's not an average team of individuals. They're all very high, intellectual, highly motivated, highly competitive individuals that sometimes find just getting on calls like this is, hey, you're getting in my way of actual productivity. Why am I here? And then the opposite side is you also have to realize that some people just don't like working in teams in some instances. It's a personality thing. And that's why I tell some of my managers, I say, every now and then you're going to get a really, really good person that their best position is the lone wolf. And they go on a task and they're just going to go tackle it. But sometimes you try to force a lone wolf on a team. So you got to recognize is that, like what Nicole and Jennifer are saying, is that these personalities and what they're, accustomed to. And now with COVID and virtual, I feel bad for a lot of people really trying to manage through this right now because there's no book. We're back to where we were 20 years ago with you had to kind of figure it out. And you're kind of talking in these forums here. It's like, how are you guys dealing with the COVID thing, with dealing with everyone from home? Are you going back to the office? How's that handling? What are we dealing with the infrastructure? How many meetings do you have? What is the culture surrounding that? It's challenging. And it goes back to the core set of how do we hire someone all the way up to how do we train someone on the human side and technology side, all the way into what is the culture that the CISO and the commander's intent that they're trying to tell everyone to say, we're all in this together, and you could do the rah-rah talks all day long on these Zoom calls, but is really that the touch points that everyone's needing to feel connected and productive and valued in the organization?
Absolutely. Guys, I hate to do this, but we're out of time here. We're probably in overtime even, but what a great discussion. I hope we figure this out as an industry, not just the five of us, but I'm going to end it with this. I said it earlier, I'll say it again. Security's been hard. Security's been too hard for a long time. I don't think it's getting necessarily any easier. We need better technology. We need better solutions. We need great people. We need great management. We need great focus in it. And but I do know this, we don't have a choice but to do that because we also need great security. Anyway, that's going to do it for this edition of CISO Talk. Nicole Dove from WarnerMedia, thank you. Rob Lee from SANS Institute, thank you, and keep up the great work. Jennifer Minella, best of luck on the new company, Viszen Security. And you know what, Jen, why don't you give people the website so they can maybe check it out?
Sure. All right. Well, it's pretty straightforward. So it's Viszen, Viszen, security.com. And I'm
Very
easy
cool.
to find on Twitter with JJX.
Absolutely. Good luck with it, Jennifer. Mitchell, as always, man, great job. Thanks for joining. We will be back in, I guess, 2 weeks. Matt Newfield, hopefully he'll be back from vacation. Mitchell and Matt will be co-hosting CISO Talk going forward. We'll still have great guests. Until then, everyone, be well and be safe. This is Alan Shimel. We're out.